So today we're going to start with a discussion with Katie, and Katie's going to introduce some of the concepts of mindfulness and actually lead us on an exercise to help us understand experientially what mindfulness is. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Katie to start off our introduction.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Looks like 101 folks are here, which is pretty cool. As I was introduced, I'm Katie. Some of you guys out there, I think, might know me already. And I'm so excited to talk to you guys about mindfulness practice. Anyone who knows me knows that I could gush about this for hours at a time, but we only have probably about 30 to 35 minutes to talk about it today. So I'm going to see if I can get you guys just as excited about it. And hopefully, if you haven't already started on your journey in your mindfulness practice, today could be the first day. And so I'm actually going to practice what I preach with y'all. And I'm going to invite you guys to join me in the practice. And we're just going to do 2 minutes of a little bit of a grounding exercise, because a lot of time we spend, or even I spend a lot of time talking about mindfulness and intellectualizing about mindfulness and explaining it. But it's really hard to know exactly what it is until you practice it. So don't worry, I don't see anybody, so there's no judgment. So I'm going to invite everyone to close their eyes if you feel comfortable, and if not, just allowing your eyes to be at a soft gaze. Just give you a moment to settle in. And start to feel the weight of your body, either on your seat, the floor, or if you're laying down in the bed. And just bringing your awareness to the weight of your body. Just noticing if there's any tension present. Noticing if your mind is busy. And if your mind wanders, like minds do, just gently bringing your awareness back to the body. So just reminding yourself, I'm sitting here, or I'm laying down. Just allowing yourself back to the present moment. Letting go of anything that happened before you woke up. And not worrying about anything that's to come. Just coming into this webinar with the intention of being fully here. And taking a deep breath in through the nose. And breathing out slowly through the mouth. And with each deep breath, just finding yourself here and present. Perhaps reminding yourself, I am here. Giving yourself permission to simply be here for the next half hour. You don't have to do anything else. And taking a couple more deep breaths in through the nose. And breathing out through the mouth. Before starting to bring your awareness back into the room that you're in. Feeling your seat in the chair, your body in the bed. And opening your eyes whenever you feel ready. And not rushing back. Just taking that moment with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everyone who participated with us. Before we get into a conversation, I know David has some questions for you about that exercise. And so I think it would be really interesting and helpful for all of us to start with, asking you some questions about what you experience. So what you see in front of you is a poll. And we're curious for you guys to tap in here and give your opinion and your feedback. So what was that experience like for you as a person? Was it different, but was it more like it was different, but I felt more present than I did 5 minutes ago? Or would you say that you felt calm and refocused? Or would you more say, it's hard for me to shed my stress right now? Or would you say you're not really sure? Go ahead and give us your opinion, and we'll take a look together so Katie and I can think about what you're all experiencing right now as we're talking.
And there's no right answer, and there's no judgment of what that was like for you. Perhaps you didn't practice it because your mind was too busy. All of that is completely and totally fine. So just be as honest as you can be.
And as this information is coming in, Katie, one of the things I was going to tell you is that unlike other talks that I've given or discussions, what's so cool about that is like everyone else during this time, I'm experiencing a level of physiological arousal and nervousness. But, that was just a different way to start a discussion in the sense that, I typically don't just start a discussion with someone or a presentation that way.
How was that for you, Jonathan?
It was cool. I mean, it's cool because, like I said, I'm giving this talk here with you. I'm discussing it with you. So it was interesting to do that in front of 100 people. Let's see what it was like for these guys. So what we have here. So most people are saying that they feel calm and refocused. About half people.
Hey, nice. That's it, right? That means
so we're done. Yeah, we're done. We're done for the day. So tune in next week, folks. And then I'd say it looks like it's evenly split between it was different. I feel it was different, but I feel more present than I did. And then, a quarter of people, almost a quarter, were saying it's hard for me to shed my stress right now. What do you make of all this, Katie, when you're looking at these answers?
Well, I'm kind of thrilled and surprised perhaps at the high number of folks who are feeling calm and refocused. I love that. I'm almost excited that the poll answer, it's hard for me to shed my stress right now, is at 22%, because that's why we're here, is to talk about mindfulness for difficult times, and not just focusing in on all of the coronavirus craze. Of course, that's at the top of everyone's minds. I mean, you can't click on any news site or anything, it seems like, without there being the word corona popping up.
Yeah, it's funny. This morning I was, before we got on here, we do a little family workout. And before we turned it on, I turned on the TV, and the first thing was CNN, and my daughter is there, who's 9. And so the first thing was like all this, this really scary stuff about coronavirus. So I tried to change the channel because I don't want exposure too much. And the next thing was like the stock market, and I turned to the next one. So you're right, it's everywhere. Before we get into the big picture of what everybody's experiencing, I actually wanted to come back to you as a person and to hear a little bit about your personal story. Because I think, hearing about your journey through mindfulness and your continued journey is helpful for everybody, to put in perspective and to think, how could I get more interested in this, or whatever level we're at? Because, out of 100 people here, or more now who've joined, a lot of people are meditating or doing something around mindfulness. Tell us about how you got into this. How did you become interested? What's your personal journey through this?
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. It's hard to picture my life without it, actually, which, I do want to tell everyone that I get really, really excited talking about this. And sometimes I notice, even with clients, my zest and excitement, though it might carry over, it sometimes people have expressed that they feel pressure to kind of immediately feel like they could be good at mindfulness. Just observing it, they're like, oh, this must be so easy for you. This is what you practice. This is what you study. And I just want to reiterate that the zest and the excitement that you see does not go without its personal struggle and the struggle of learning how to incorporate this into my life as a way of being. So just wanted to let you guys know that as excited as I may be, this is something that is a lifelong journey, and I encourage you guys to kind of think about it in that way if you can. The way that it kind of started for me is a pretty specific moment. I was in an awesome relationship from 18 to 23, and in my idealist romantic rom-com world, I thought it was going to end in marriage and babies and all the cute stuff. And it didn't. We ended up breaking up, and it was one of the hardest times I've ever had in my life. Even though it was very amicable, it was probably one of my first real experiences of heartbreak. And if anyone knows about the science of heartbreak, it basically looks in the brain like drug withdrawal. So it was epic, and it was an oddly dark time for me because I came out at 23 completely disillusioned. I was thinking to myself, what, like, love ends? Like, that's not possible. I had it all written out. And my friend, who is a yoga instructor, and at the time was on her own yoga journey, mindfulness journey, she actually offered me a book called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, which, in case you wonder if I'm an imposter or fake, I have this really perfectly placed stack of mindfulness books behind me.
Nice work.
And it's in there somewhere. But it was a book that essentially introduced to me a different way of living my life. It spoke to me because I was able to realize that I didn't have to suffer in the way that I was suffering. And that simply by changing the way that I related to my thoughts, simply changing the way that I related to my emotions, could be completely life-changing. And after I picked up that book, I started actually gifting it to other people, and they've since been able to gift it to others, which has been super cool. But yeah, it all birthed out of a rom-com heartbreak, basically.
Right. So things actually really did fall apart for you there in those moments, and that
Yeah.
mindfulness was a way to put things in perspective and to kind of find your way back.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. Yeah, so we can jump in and start talking about what mindfulness is. Jonathan, you and I talk about this a lot. So Jonathan and I have known each other, it'll be just about 5 years in a week or so.
Yes, we're celebrating here too with all you guys today. 5 years of friendship. That's why
Yeah,
the rainbow is right behind us.
that's true. I actually got this plant for you, Jonathan. Happy 5-year anniversary.
Thanks. I have a very muted, background here for Zoom, but behind here is a rainbow of friendship.
Perfect. Well, it's like my imagination can do wonders. So that's awesome. So yeah, so Jonathan and I, we love to talk about mindfulness practice all the time, and we have slightly different ways sometimes of bringing it to light to clients, but ultimately, we've both found, and Jonathan, I think you can echo this, the practice to be a pretty profound little thing to sneak into both therapy sessions and our own life. I know, Jonathan, you've been meditating pretty much daily for how long? What's your record on Headspace now?
I broke my Headspace streak, but I'd say it's pretty much every day for the past 3 years now.
So pretty epic. And what have you noticed has changed or shifted from that practice?
I think what shifted is my ability to shift. What shifted the most is my ability to take a stimulus, whether it's, something that's stressing me out about my health or something that's stressing me about a situation, and to look at it differently. Just 5 minutes ago, I was, futzing around trying to get my audio to work on to talk to all 116 of you guys. And there was a moment of, my heart went up, I felt a little flushed. I couldn't get it to work. But these past 3 years of doing this, I think puts more of a buffer, and more of I can get outside and smile at those moments more than I used to just get really, really frustrated. So I guess in very clear terms, it's helped me to self-regulate a lot in moments where there would be more up and down of my stress or emotion.
Awesome. Wow. Epic. So I'm sure that's all turning you guys on to mindfulness right now, just hearing that. So what is mindfulness? As some of you guys tuned in, you may have seen just a page with some wonderful quotes and definitions by various experts. In the mindfulness community, it's kind of known that it's a bit of an undefinable, has a bit of an undefinable quality to it. But in all essence, mindfulness is really about paying attention. And I think a lot of people, when they hear about mindfulness, at least in my experience, they kind of immediately put pressure on themselves to experience some kind of like epic opening or awakening, right? Like we hear about enlightenment and big words like that that are associated with mindfulness and meditation, which are two linked cousins, but aren't the same thing. We'll talk about that a little later. But mindfulness in all essence is really about training your mind to be able to come back to the present moment. And we do it all the time, actually. We don't do it often enough. And most of us realize that perhaps we're not paying very much attention at all. But even just now, like I looked ahead of me and there's a pillow there with blue and red kind of markings, right? So even though perhaps I wasn't as mindful with you guys here for a moment and I got distracted, I paid attention to that pillow. And for that moment, I was able to drop back into the present moment. So mindfulness is really, if you think about it, it's not about always staying present. That's really not possible given the nature of our mind, right? Like our mind wanders, it's wired for negativity bias, right? Which means it's always looking to detect threat, like what can I worry about, right? What can I, what can I get stuck on in the past, right? What story can I keep retelling myself? So the practice of mindfulness is noticing, right? So building that awareness, noticing and catching yourself. Oh, whoa, maybe I've been sitting on the news for way too long, right? Or, oh, wow, you know what? I'm actually feeling really lonely right now. And it's noticing and being able to bring your awareness back into the present, or noticing that you've been worrying for an hour and allowing your thoughts to spiral, right? We think of that, we call it rumination. So really getting stuck on the same story or worry. Somebody that I know going to get sick, how long is this going to last? So mindfulness practice allows us to not get caught up essentially in what's happening in front of us. And the cool thing is, and we'll flash a slide about the science a little later, but it down regulates our fight, flight, and freeze response, right? So we all have a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is essentially just our fear center, our threat center. And as cool as our brains are, it hasn't adapted over time to respond to emotional threat. So essentially, when you're responding to something scary like the coronavirus craze or loss of any kind, right? And we could definitely talk about loss today because that's happening in so many different forms. That fear center lights up. So even when you worry about something simple, even it could be like, oh man, the sun is in my eyes, right? So any experience of suffering, and I sort of broadly define suffering as essentially any experience of discomfort, displeasure, dislike,
Right. Right.
however subtle.
Yeah, there's tons of suffering. And, I think, one of the things I'm curious about, we have some really great questions here that are coming up from people.
Oh, right.
And, this one, I think, gives us a chance to kind of put some of what you're talking about and what we practice into, and I'd love to discuss this with you. So,
Yeah.
Someone asked here, I know I'm supposed to let go of what I can't control, but how do you deal with something awful that you have no control over, that you can't get out of your head and you have extreme anxiety over it? I have a mother in a nursing home who I normally speak to 5 times a day, spend weekends with her. I haven't seen her in a month. She used to be a private aide, but they are all either sick or afraid to come in, so she has no one. She's alone most of the day. Since Wednesday, she has shut down. She refuses to speak. She's in a wheelchair, and she's wheelchair bound, but normally can stand up to transfer to the toilet or bed. She refuses now and can only be transferred with a mechanical lift. When I call her and the nurse hands the phone, she won't talk to me. I've been going to the nursing home twice a week and standing outside her window and calling on her on the phone so she can see me when she talks to me. On Saturday, I went with a big sign that said, "I love you." And I called her on the phone. She wouldn't even talk to me or even open her eyes. And while we're both while everybody here is thinking about that, because it's a really powerful question, it's one that I think many of us relate to. I mean, I relate to that too. My mom, who's listening here, I haven't really seen her in person for 3 weeks. I've seen her 10 feet away.
Yeah.
So we're all really struggling with these real. Sometimes I guess what I'm saying to you, Katie, is sometimes mindfulness is helpful to look differently at a situation that's about perspective.
Mhm.
But there's so many material challenges in our life like this one. And I guess, I think what this person is sort of asking is, I know I'm supposed to do this, but,
Mhm.
there's these big challenges in my way. And,
Mhm.
I have some thoughts about it too, but what's your thinking about this? Like, what should we say to this person? And how could something like the practice of mindfulness help them?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And thank you so much to whomever shared that. That was really, really vulnerable and
And
um,
brave, right? So
brave.
brave.
Yeah, epically courageous to share a story that is obviously bringing a lot of suffering and pain. So, just offering you a little bit of loving kindness in this moment, whoever you are. Um, and I hear you, one of the one of the ways that mindfulness can be profoundly helpful is certainly with increasing our tolerance for uncertainty, and for being able to build on our practice of acceptance, right? And I think the really important piece about acceptance here, and I swear I talk about this 4 times a day with clients and other folks. Acceptance does not mean giving in. It doesn't mean invalidating your experience. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean saying, oh, sucks, not going to do something about it. Acceptance, and it's one of the kind of foundations of mindfulness, right? So we're looking at something non-judgmentally, which means we're not focused on whether or not we like or dislike something in that particular moment. Instead, what we learn to focus on is, at first, acknowledging reality as it is. So relieving ourselves for, even if it's just for a moment, right? Taking away the pressure of like, I should be able to do this for some extended amount of time. But just for a moment, being able to say to yourself, I accept that this is happening. The reason that that becomes difficult for most people is because one of our definition of acceptance, kind of in colloquial language, right? It just means like that why would I accept this? I don't like this. I want this to go away. I don't want to feel this much pain. I want to be with my mom. I, want her to want to be with me. But our rejection or sort of aversion, right? Like we don't like something in the given moment, but it's here and it's out of our control. So something really powerful that we can learn to do before we hold a hand over our heart or, address a lot of the pain and the grief that we're feeling, which is so important. And we can do that with mindfulness practice.
Yeah, I think what you're saying,
Yeah.
Katie, which is really powerful is, a lot of times what we try to do when we have a thought is to change it. And that sometimes works. It sometimes works to say, okay, I'm going to look at this in a different way.
Yeah.
But occasionally trying to change it can actually exacerbate it or make the thought worse. And I think what you're saying is in those moments where you have these thoughts is just to say, it's okay that I'm thinking this, or I accept that this is the way I'm feeling. And that by doing that, it creates, by having that acknowledgement, it creates that sense of being able to look at it in a different way, rather than to become too connected to that thought.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. No, it's true. Sometimes I get lost in my dreamy world of mindfulness, and actually, Jonathan's pretty brilliant at circling back and breaking it down. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, allowing ourselves to notice something as it is, right? If I said, "Okay, there's the pillow," It's red and blue and green and yellow. It allows me to create a little bit of separation by labeling it, right? There's this like fun quote that says, if you name it, you can tame it. So you could
I
even
love
say
that.
to
I love
yourself,
it.
yeah, rhymes are great. So, you know, you could name it, you know, this is suffering. I accept that there's suffering, right? Or I accept that this is not in my control. And notice what happens in your body. And gosh, I could, you know, maybe we'll do another webinar specifically on mindfulness of physiology in the body. Um, but just noticing what happens for you when you acknowledge reality as it is, and how much it allows you to step back and perhaps either take a different perspective or actually pay attention to what feels really, really painful without judging that experience.
You know, I was just thinking as you're, first of all, someone, thank you, just gave us a +1 for rhymes. So you just got a +1 for rhymes. I saw a comment there. And you know, I was thinking about that, like +1 for rhymes. If you can name it, you can tame it. I think that's just sort of true of all things that you learn to do with your brain. If you can make it simpler, you know, our brains are so complicated all the time. And if you can make it simpler, then these complex problems feel differently. And I think that's what's so great about this is if really all you're doing is practicing saying to yourself, okay, I'm suffering, and that's okay. You know, I accept that. That simplifies things, because you know people were asking also on the Q&A about what ifs. Well, everybody's in the world of what ifs. What if this virus gets worse? What if this happens to my job? A lot of people listening and a lot of people who are watching have real financial burden because of this. Some people lost their jobs. Some people, you know, I know many people that are potentially losing their places of living. So, you know, we can get caught up in the what's if 24 hours a day, even when there's times when we can't control things. There's nothing we could do. It's midnight, all the banks are closed, you know, no one's answering the phone. So to be able to just say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. I'm aware of it. I'm feeling this way. I
Mhm.
think, as you're saying, is a way to really diffuse and to be able to put that thing into perspective. Because the more that we try to change it in our mind when there's no change available, the
Mhm.
more it rattles around in there.
Totally. I love that. That's super, super helpful.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
I'm curious. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, I just wanted to speak to your point about, you know, a lot of the very real challenges that are present for people, including the financial burden, including, you know, actual, you know, loss of humans in our lives that we, you know, that we care about and love, but also just loss of our freedom, right? Loss of activities that we're used to engaging in. Did I
Yeah, I
get
mean,
it right? Is that where you were going?
you totally. I mean, well, I think it's just like it's exactly right. You know, there's so many different things right now that people are challenged with, that all the things you've talked about, even that brief exercise, that 60-second exercise that you led us through, that was helpful for me in the stress of even having this conversation, or all the technical difficulties. Even something as simple as that, that Katie led us through, could be helpful. And we're curious about you. You know, David has another poll here that he's going to put out for folks now to ask you, you know, what's happening for you, what's most on your mind. And it's going to help us to hear from you guys about you know, your perspective on what's most bothering you, or you know, what you're really thinking about. So well David puts that, here it is. So mindfulness in this time of corona, you know, which of these do you feel like is really most makes it difficult to practice something like mindfulness? So is it fear of getting sick for you, or fear of a loved one falling ill? Is it uncertainty about your job? Is it more not being able to escape the news about, and also escape your living room? Or is it everything about the situation? While people are filling that out, you know, maybe we can go to that slide about the different kind of attitudes through
Yeah.
about mindfulness. I'd love to have Katie kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love
Um,
to.
yeah. So Katie, tell us a little bit about you know, the different attitudes that make up a mindfulness practice. So
Sure. And major props you'll see in a moment, these really sweet icons that one of my friends and colleagues drew, Joey. I don't know if you're on, Joey, but if you are, thank you for these. Oh, why don't we look at this poll
yeah, let's
really
do it.
quickly? So let's see what we have. So it looks like actually majority is falling into the last category, which is everything about the current situation. So, uh, which sounds about right. There are so many different pieces of the situation, I think, that are kind of hijacking our brains. It looks like we're almost pretty even on the job uncertainty and loss, financial struggle, and the fear of getting sick or a loved one falling ill. Absolutely. I want to speak to the job uncertainty, loss, and financial struggle really quickly in regards to mindfulness practice. You know, um, maybe many of you or some of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So he was, a cool dude, psychologist, who sort of talked about what kind of steps need to be taken for us to self-actualize, right? So for us to actually live our most fulfilled lives, live our best selves. And he basically studied humans in all kinds of different situations and settings and experiences. And what he realized was that at the very bottom of that pyramid is essentially safety. So if we cannot meet our safety needs, right? So that's food, shelter, water. There's one more.
Netflix.
Right. If we can't meet those needs, right? It's actually going to be really hard for our brain to focus on higher uh, uh, higher levels of thinking, which are things like mindfulness practice, right? So if we can't put food on the table or we're worried about our job security, it actually becomes even more difficult to practice mindfulness because our brain is wired to figure out how to meet those needs first, right? Before we hit that top level of fulfillment. So I just want to validate anyone who is experiencing job loss. I mean, a few of my best friends lost their jobs, as well as many people that I know, clients, et cetera. And that's been such just an epic amount of suffering and uncertainty that has come from that. And I just want to validate that, if you're feeling the pressure or judging yourself for like, why can't I be more mindful? Why can't I sit down and meditate? Katie said I should do this. Why can't I do it? She texts me all the time about mindfulness. I'm not doing it enough. I just want to validate that that's completely normal. And, your brain is trying to figure out how to get those needs met before it can actually start to bring its awareness back into the present. So I think, given like how much it's being hijacked by, just
Completely.
validate your own experience and acknowledge that, okay, maybe it's actually really hard for me to be mindful right now because I don't have a job or I don't know what my income is going to be.
Well, a couple things that came up when I was listening to you talk about that is, well, first of all, with those slides, thank you everybody who responded, because it helps us to understand for this webinar and future webinars, what's going to be most helpful. The thing I noticed too is I think that most people were in the camp of everything about the situation. And I think that's an example where mindfulness can help, because once things get balled up into that ball of stress, it's really difficult to do or have any proactive action in your life. And one way that I find mindfulness helpful is it helps me to be aware when I think, oh, everything stresses me out, right? Then, it becomes like this overwhelming thing. But if I can be more aware of the various components of what's stressing me out and to be able to see them independently, then it can really help me to say, oh, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling stressed out about finances. I'm feeling stressed out about parenting. And can help me then to kind of one by one be able to deal with those things. So I think, Katie's right. Like if right now you're worried about your job or you're worried about your house, I mean, those things can be extremely overwhelming, and trying to take a moment to focus on your breath could help. But it's really important, as Katie's saying, if you can't, to use that mindful perspective on the fact that you can't, right?
Yeah.
To take the judgment out of it.
It's a little meta.
It's totally meta. Katie, people are asking this question, and I want to make sure we get to it. A lot of people have asked this on the chat, which is, I know you were going to talk about this later, but I want to make sure that, we are talking about this is, what's the difference between, in your mind, how do mindfulness and meditation fit in? Because there's a lot of confusion about that. And I think people would benefit from you walking them through in your mind how they fit in together.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's a question that comes up all the time. And in fact, whenever I meet new clients, and oftentimes people will come to me because I'm sort of the resident mindfulness human, which is a big title to carry, but I'm happy to carry it. Look at that. It's me wearing Vans and a hoodie.
That's what mindfulness is, folks. Just get yourself a pair of checkered Vans. You're good to go.
Actually, though.
And I'll just acknowledge, we're gonna wrap up at 10:45 today. So we have another few minutes to talk and answer some questions. So Katie's going to walk us through this a little bit, and then we'll see if there's any other questions that people have. Please don't hesitate to hit in the Q&A. I think we've answered most of them, but I'll take a quick scan of this while Katie's helping us to
Jonathan,
understand.
I think you went back in time. You said we're ending at 10:45. You're so mindful that you're actually like going
So
backwards.
I forgot to let everybody know, one of the benefits of mindfulness is time travel. If you get to a really high level like Katie's at, you can boost back and forth. 11:45 will be, sorry, no, 11:15, 11:15.
We're time traveling. Okay. So let me talk about mindfulness as meditation as one of the biggest myths really quickly. So the easiest way to think about it is that meditation can be a way to practice mindfulness, right? So in order to practice mindfulness, you do not need to be a meditator. You don't even need to meditate, even though I highly recommend it. And we can do a webinar. Maybe we will do a webinar depending on if people are interested, just talking about meditation. But mindfulness practice really is just about returning to the present moment. And that can happen when you're walking outside. It can happen when you're scrolling through the news. It's just noticing what you're doing in the present moment without judgment. Meditation is, and there are different types of meditation. We won't get into it today. There's a type of meditation called mindfulness meditation. But in essence, meditation is a time when you have a conscious, intentional moment or a set of moments, minutes even, sitting down and bringing your attention into your inner experience in a particular way.
So I think what
So,
you're saying is,
yeah.
meditation is an exercise where you're actually trying to actively refocus your attention in some way, where mindfulness could be part of any part of your day, coming back to the present moment, really being immersed with your experience in some way. And that could involve mindful eating, it could involve mindful walking, it could involve just what you did earlier where you were focusing on the pillow.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Yeah, because I just
yeah,
want to
yeah,
ask you, there was a really great question
yeah.
about this, which is, how about some self-soothing techniques for moments of panic about safety? And I
Oh,
think we're all experiencing that from time to time. I think we all, what I've experienced is we all ping pong back and forth. Not we all, but a lot of people that I have been coaching and working with in my practice and Union Square practice, but also just in my personal life and me myself. Some days I feel like it's all going to be okay. Some moments, I should say, it's all going to be okay. And then there's moments where you turn on the news and it's like, whoa, am I safe? Is my family safe? Are my loved ones safe? And I think what you're saying is that mindfulness, that there are things we can do in the present moment to help us kind of come back to center in some way. What would be
mhm.
like a couple things that you would say? You touched on a couple of them, but what are a couple of things that people could do in the moment when they feel those moments of panic about themselves, about the future, that would
Yeah,
really help?
sure. The first one that comes to mind is the hand over heart technique. And it sounds like very fancy when you call it that, but it's really just physically moving your hand and placing it over your heart center. So the cool thing that happens when you do this, and by the way, for anyone who's not touchy feely and this feels uncomfortable, totally normal. I've converted many clients who at first refused to do this, and now they'll sit in sessions with their hand over their heart anytime they're starting to feel a sense of worry or panic. So we have a fight, flight, or freeze, right? Our stress response that happens in our body. All kinds of hormonal stuff happens, right? Our body kind of freaks out. This actually, the touch, especially if you can do skin against skin, it actually activates our care response physiologically. So it actually activates oxytocin, which is the love and care hormone. It activates dopamine, right, which is the happiness hormone. So something as simple when you're feeling unsafe as bringing hand to heart, feeling the weight of it, feeling the warmth of it, just allowing for that soothing touch to happen, especially since so many of us are actually isolated from other people. And I could spend an hour talking about that too, but
So let's say,
people,
let's spend like 5 seconds, because I love this. And
yeah,
let's just do it for everybody.
I love it.
There's about 110 people who are listening here.
Nice.
Katie, why don't you lead us as we sort of close out?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe, we can sort of work towards ending with this, lead us through that. Like, so like someone who's listening here, what should they exactly do?
Yeah. So I'll have you guys close your eyes if you're comfortable. You don't have to close your eyes. Again, just having a soft gaze. Don't worry about looking at me so much, or at yourselves in the camera at the slides. So sometimes closing your eyes can help the distractions go away. So giving your eyes a close. And again, just grounding yourself just by feeling the weight of your body, just drawing your awareness there. And for a moment, bringing your awareness to something that is causing you suffering right now amidst all of this craze. So just bringing to mind that thought, I'm worried that about my parent, um, I'm feeling really restless and bored at home. I'm panicking about getting a new job. I'm really sad I can't see my loved ones. So if you can just access a thought or two, and perhaps it comes with an emotion, um, and just bringing your hand and placing it over your heart center. And if that doesn't feel comfortable, you can actually also place a hand over your belly. You can even offer yourself a gentle hug. So if you wrap your hands around your shoulders, and just offering yourself a few words of comfort. So may I feel safe, for example. So you might just repeat that to yourself a few times, kind of like a mantra. Sometimes I'll even kind of start rocking and notice that I start rocking during this moment. May I feel safe. And knowing that you can come back to this any time of the day, could be any mantra that feels comfortable for you, that resonates with you. Just acknowledging what your pain or suffering or fear or panic is. Simply acknowledging it, not judging it, not calling it good or bad. Is this pleasant or unpleasant? Not labeling it as anything other than what the experience is. This is suffering. This is pain. This is shame. This is loss. This is grief. And may I feel safe. So you're not trying to push away feelings or thoughts. You're allowing them to be there while you offer yourself that compassion. And giving it the time that it deserves. And I know we're at a bit of a rush to close out, but it is important that you take a few moments. And certainly if you have to go, please feel free. You can take this practice with you. And after a couple of breaths, whenever you feel ready, bringing your hand down or keeping it up. I'll sometimes sit through sessions with my hand over my heart, opening your eyes when you're ready.
That was wonderful and really practical and helpful for me, and I'm sure many other people on this call. Let's turn to show where people can reach Katie. Katie is a therapist at our practice, Union Square Practice, but also started this initiative called Growspace. You can reach out to her at Katie at hellogrowspace.com if you have questions about mindfulness or mindfulness coaching. You can follow Katie at Growspace_NYC on Instagram for an excellent array of different quotes and information and videos about mindfulness.
When we look at the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness, they're just ways for us to gauge, what aspects of mindfulness we might be tapping into or not. So you could throw those icons on there, David. So we've got non-judgment that we talked about, right? So that's really thinking about not labeling something as pleasant or unpleasant. So in regards to this corona craze, the idea would be that when thoughts come up for you, just recognizing that they're coming up, right? And not necessarily saying, oh, here's like another thought about corona, and kind of immediately judging that experience. Oh, you could throw them all up there. Don't worry about it. We'll confuse people. We'll have them all look at it at the same time. Thanks, David. Patience, that's been a big one. I'm sure it has for folks who have waited in any grocery lines these days. it's been pretty epic to see people like 6 feet apart, and packages that take a lot longer to deliver. I mean, it sounds like all silly stuff, but we really find ourselves with our patients tested. And so in mindfulness practice, one thing that we can recognize is that things do tend to unfold in the time that they unfold. So utilizing acceptance in that moment and saying to yourself, okay, I'm waiting in a line, instead of catching on and getting caught up in the thought, like, I don't want to wait in this line. I don't want to be here. I don't want this to be this uncomfortable. We allow ourselves to acknowledge that just part of life in general is about being acknowledging that life kind of unfolds, again, out of our control a lot of time. Um, Beginner's mind, any of you who have done any kind of yoga have probably heard this, which is coming to the mat as if you were doing it for the first time. So that's a really cool way to, every day right now I think feels like Groundhog Day for a lot of people. That's what I've been hearing. They're like, yeah, nothing really has happened. I'm sitting and doing the same things every day. So I encourage you as a way to bring in a little bit more mindfulness is each day to find 5 new things that you can notice. And it could be anything. It could be the taste of your coffee in the morning, the way the light hits something in your room, the way the leather feels against your skin, the way, your eggs taste in the morning. I mean, there are just millions, maybe not millions, I'm not a mathematician, but like tons and tons of things that you can look at with a new and fresh mind. And that alone will take you out of the fight or flight system. My favorite one, and then the other ones are a little bit self-explanatory, is curiosity. So this has been by far the most life-changing, I think, aspect of mindfulness practice for me. It has been I've had to teach myself how to shift from a fear-based, anxiety-based perspective and shift into a curious perspective. So what does that mean? That means that something as simple as I wake up, and maybe normally my wake up these days is, oh my gosh, what am I going to find out on the news today? Am I going to find out, God forbid, one of my loved ones is sick today, right? Like, these are normal thoughts that we're having constantly. Am I going to lose my job today? Right? So we tend to go into a lot of experiences from a fear-based mindset. And that's normal. It's evolutionary. It's there to protect us in a way, right? Like, if we can make sure that we're paying attention to all the threat, and we recount every single moment of worry and threat in our minds, and maybe we'll be protected, maybe we'll be safe.
I mean,
It
I think
doesn't.
that actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
that is a great perspective on mindfulness too, because one of the things we talk about in the last webinar, and what we talk a lot about at the practice, is this idea of having a growth mindset, right? Which is when you have an experience that's stress, like this webinar for us, or what we've been talking about in terms of job loss or relationships, that what happens, as Katie's talking about, is you tend to, a lot of times, the human way is to experience it as a threat. And so we're taught, or we think, oh, the best way to do it is to change and look at it as an opportunity or challenge, or look at it through curiosity. But I find, and most people find, that's really difficult to do. So mindfulness is a way to help you to be able to make that shift. So when something comes at you as a stress, you can make a decision, a conscious decision, to look at it more as an opportunity or have curiosity. That it's really a way of being that helps you to do that, rather than to really go back to kind of that monkey mind, right? That
Yeah.
inner animal mind that just says, hey, this is scary, I should run away from this.
And you can acknowledge that there's fear, right? Like, mindfulness allows us to hold multiple truths at the same time. We're not trying to say, no, you shouldn't feel afraid, right? There's no judgment with fear being present, but it's kind of curiosity-based thinking is, there's fear present, and what else is present here? And this is what I really wanted to emphasize. And thank you to the 70 humans who are still here. That's amazing. As you can tell, I can and do talk about this at length. But, you know, there's more than just Corona going on right now. And we can remind ourselves of that, and we can use mindfulness practice to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, and also without trying to say that Corona is not going on. So to be able to say Corona is going on right now and all these things are going on, I think what you're talking about is mindfulness gives us the opportunity to do that. It's the opportunity to hold both the fact that Corona is going on, but also this moment is going on with my friend that keeps me connected, and also this moment's going on with my loved one, or my knitting, or my, watching reruns of old sitcoms, or whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, mindfulness is, to your point, practice is certainly not meant to invalidate any parts of your experience. It's meant to acknowledge any and all parts of experience that feel important to you. It just allows our brain to create enough space between kind of the thing that's making you worry and yourself, in order for you to perhaps look at it with more clarity, to look at it with more curiosity, to say to yourself, maybe I've done enough worrying today. Maybe more worry is actually going to be harmful for me. Maybe it's, time for me to look at something else today. Maybe it's time for me to examine something else today, to think about something else today. So mindfulness, what's epic about it really is the more you practice, the more it allows you to just catch yourself, uh, and to see, oh wow, my mind's doing this a lot. Okay, what else can I do with my mind? What else is happening right now? And again, making a wiser choice. So when we think about it, it's not about a right or wrong, good bad choice. It's just about what's a wise choice. And maybe the wise choice is sitting and eating ice cream, or rolling up in a ball and crying and experiencing and feeling your grief. Maybe the wise choice is distracting yourself with a video game, um, or FaceTiming with your friends and not thinking about it. Like, maybe that's the wise choice for you. But deepening your mindfulness practice actually allows you um, to to acknowledge those things and then make the decision, which is pretty cool.
Why don't we put up some of those resources that Katie
Yeah, I was just about to mention. So
because I want to make sure that people know what to do. Obviously you can contact Katie, but here are a bunch of resources. And people asked again, how can you access this information later? So this will be posted on our Facebook page. It's just Union Square Practice on Facebook. And you can also go to the Union Square Practice site, and this will be posted as well as there. So you can come back and access this. So it's unionsquarepractice.com or Union Square Practice on Facebook. You can also, as I said, email Katie at katie@hellogrowspace.com. And you can always contact us and Katie at unionsquarepractice.com or at hellogrowspace.com.
you could basically just contact us in every way, shape, or form.
You light a candle,
Call us in the middle of the night, whatever you want. But actually, to those who are still here and those who watch this webinar later, because I know a lot of people mentioned that they were hoping to access it later, please email me. Let me know if you have any questions. I really love talking about this. I love teaching it. I'm, more than happy to spend any amount of time supporting people in this way. And if you're interested in something more regular, just with me, in regards to like a weekly or bi-weekly, or I don't know, daily mindfulness practice, and it could be as informal and casual as you guys want, please let me know. I think there's a survey after that a lot of you guys might have access to. So if that's something you're interested in, it's something I'm available and open to do. And there you can ask all the questions and listen to me drone on about this. But yes, the resources page, again, these are just like the tiniest handful of awesome books that could be good for this time period. A few workbooks that I have clients work on, a few podcasts that are really wonderful. And there you can listen to experts who've been doing this for many, many, many years, and a few apps that can help you become more present, mindful, or even meditate if that's something that you're interested in. So please feel free to contact me, really, Katie@hellogrowspace.com. Looking
Wonderful.
forward to all it. Yeah. Thank you guys
So
so much.
yes, thank you so much. We're gonna wrap up here. Please contact us if you have any questions, and don't forget next week we'll be talking about mindful parenting next Monday at 10:30 a.m. with Dr. Basan. Thank you so much, and we hope everybody stays as safe and as healthy as possible, and that some of the techniques you learned from Katie today and that we talked about help you to do so. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Be safe, be well.